Have a good day, everyone. I am Rauda Ismael, 4.8 reporter. Taxation in Spanish Philippines. The Philippines may have abundant natural resources even before the encroachment of the Spaniards, but our ancestors were mainly involved in subsistence economy. Buwis-buwis handog. It is an obligation to provide labor services to the datus in some early Filipino communities in the Philippines may resemble taxation. It is essentially different from the contemporary meaning of the concept. The arrival of the Spaniards altered the subsistence system because they imposed the payment of tributes from the Filipinos. Payment of tributes. It is similar to what had been practiced in all colonies in America. The purpose of it is to generate resources to finance the maintenance of the islands, such as salaries of the government officials and expenses of the clergy. The difficulty faced by the Spaniards in revenue collection through tribute. It was the dispersed nature of settlements which they solved by introducing the system of reduction by creating pueblos. It is a system where Filipinos were gathered and awarded plots of land to till. Later on, the settlements will be handled by encomenderos. Encomenderos is the one who receive rewards from the Spanish crown for their services. There is exempted from payment of tributes, and this is the following: the principals, alcaldes, gobernadors, cabezas de barangay, soldiers, member of the civil guard, government officials, and vagrants. The Filipinos who were once satisfied with agricultural production for subsistence had to increase production to meet the demands of payments, and more intensive agricultural system had to be introduced. Later on, half of the tribute was paid in cash and the rest with produce. This financed the conquest of the Philippines. Toward the end of 16th century, the Manila-Acapulco trade was established through the galleons, a way by which the Spaniards could make sure that European presence would be sustained. Once a year, the galleon would be loaded up with merchandise from Asia and sent to New Spain, Mexico, and back. This improved the economy of the Philippines and reinforced the control of the Spaniards all over the country. Tax collections was still very poor and subsidy from Spain would be needed. Through the Real, delivered from the Mexican treasury to the Philippines through the galleons. This subsidy stopped as Mexico became independent in 1820. In 1884, the payment of tribute was put to a stop and was replaced by a poll tax collected through a certificate of identification called the Cédula Personal. This is required from every resident and must be carried while traveling. Unlike the tribute, the payment of cédulas is by person and not by family. Payment of the cédula is a progressive and according to income categories. This system, however, was a heavy burden for peasants and was easy for the wealthy. But because of this, revenue collection greatly increased and became main source of government income. The Chinese in the Philippines were also made to pay their discriminatory cédula, which was bigger than what the Filipinos paid. Two direct taxes were added in 1878 and imposed on urban incomes. Urbana is a tax on the annual rental value of an urban real estate. And industria is a tax on salaries, dividends, and profits. These taxes were universal and affected all kinds of economic activity except agriculture, which was exempt to encourage growth. During the 19th century, indirect taxes such as customs duties were imposed on exports and imports to further raise revenue, especially when economic growth increased exponentially. There were no excise taxes collected by the Spaniards throughout the years of colonialism. The colonial government also gained income from monopolies such as the sale of stamp paper, manufacture and sale of liquor, cockpits, and opium. But the biggest of the state monopolies was tobacco, which began in 1781 and halted in 1882. Only certain areas were assigned to cultivate tobacco, which the government purchased at a price dictated to the growers. This monopoly made it possible for the colony to create a surplus of income that made it self-sufficient without the need for the citoadoril, and even contributed to the treasury of Spain. Forced labor was a character of Spanish colonial taxation in the Philippines and was required from the Filipinos. It proves useful in defending the territory of the colony, in augmenting the labor required by woodcutting and shipbuilding, especially during the time of the galleon trade. Polo system, where male Filipinos were obliged to serve, a burden that resulted in an increase in death rate and flight to the mountains, which led to a decrease in population in the 17th century. This changed later on as polos and services became lighter and was organized at the municipal level. Labor provided was used in public works such as building of roads and bridges. Some were made to serve the municipal office or as night guards. Males were required to provide labors for 40 days a year, reduced to 15 days a year in 1884. They may option out by paying the falas of 3 pesos per annum, which was usually lost corruption because it was collected at the municipal level and were known as kaidas or droppings. The polos would be called prestation personal or personal services by the second half of the 19th century. Taxation in the Philippines during the Spanish colonial period was characterized by the heavy burden placed on the Filipinos and the corruption of the principals or the former datus and local elites who were co-opted by the Spaniards to subjugate and control the natives on their behalf. The principals who were given positions such as cabezas de barangay or alcaldes in the local government were able to enrich themselves by pocketing tributus and or falas, while the peasants were left to be abused. Taxation appeared progressive, but the disparity between the less taxed principals and the heavily taxed peasants made the rich richer and the poor poorer. The primary source is Mariano Herbosa writes to Rizal about taxes. Source: Mariano Herbosa to Jose Rizal, Calamba, 29 August 1886. Letters between Rizal and family members, Manila National Heroes Commission, 1964. The tax. With regard to your question on this, the answer is very long, as it is the cause of the prevailing misery here. What can I write? You will be only one half of the story, and even Damas Senior cannot exhaust the subject. Nevertheless, I'll try to write what I can. Though I may not be able to give a complete story, you may at least know half of it. Here are many kinds of taxes, what they call irrigated rice land, even it has no water, must pay a tax of 50 kavanas of palay and husk or rice, and land with 6 kavanas of seed pay 5 pesos in cash. The land they call dry land that is planted to sugarcane, maize, and others pay different rates. Even if the agreed amount is 30 pesos for land with 6 kavanas of seed, if they see that the harvest is good, they increase the tax, but they don't decrease it if the harvest is poor. There is land whose tax is 25 pesos or 20 pesos according to custom. The most troublesome are the residential lots in the town. There is no fixed rule that is followed, only their whim. Hence, even it is only one span in size, if a stone wall is added, 50 pesos must be paid. Lowest being is 20 pesos, but a nipa or kogon house pays only 1 peso for an area of 10 fathom square. Another feature of this system is that on the day you accept the conditions, the contract will be written, which cannot be changed for 4 years. But the tax is increased every year. For these reasons, for 2 years, now the payment of tax is confused, and little by little, the fear of the residents here of the word vacant is being dispelled, which our ancestors had feared so much. The result is bargaining, like they do in buying fish. It is advisable to offer a low figure of payment can be postponed, unlike before, when people were very much afraid to pay after May. I'm looking for a receipt to send you, but I cannot find any because we don't get a receipt every time we pay. Anyway, it is valueless as it does not state the amount paid. It only says that the tax for that year was paid without stating whether it is 5 centavos, 25 centavos, 100 or 100,000 pesos. The residents who ask or get their said receipt accept it with closed eyes. The receipt has no signature in the place where the amount paid ought to be, although it bears their name. Until now, I cannot comprehend why some are signed and others are not. This is more or less what is happening here in the payment of land tax, and it has been so for many years since I can remember. Besides this, the taxes on the plants in the fields that are far from the town, like the land in Pansol, are various. The tax on the palay is separate from the tax on maize, mongo, or garlic. There is no limit to this tax, for they fix it themselves. Since July, no one buys sugar, and since June, locusts are all over the town, and they are destroying palay and sugarcane, which is what we regret here. The governor gave 50 pesos to pay the catchers of locusts, but when they took them to the town hall, they were paid only 25 cents a cavan and half, and it seems that the locusts are not decreasing. According to the guests of the residents here, only 300 cavanas of locusts have been caught in this town. Many still remain, though the governor has not sent any more money. The people have not stopped catching them. That's all for the taxation in Spanish Philippines. Thank you.